Okay, to the Dharma races. Oh, that's really positive. Okay, well, here we are, Thursday. This Thursday. I was kind of thinking it was Friday this morning, driving here. Thought, oh, one more day. Now I'm like, oh, 2 more days. So what I thought might be kind of fun for us to spend some time this morning looking at vow. And in particular, I'm just struck by this book by Shahako Okumura, Living by Vow. It's just so beautiful. And what inspires me is how Okumura Roshi talks about we can either live by vow or we can live by karma, right? We can live by vow or we can live by karma. And we know what living by karma means. We also know what living by vow means at this stage and for all of us. But you know that the living by karma, where it's this constant, repetitive being pulled, push, pull, this, that, preferences, aversions, attachments. And then we make choices based on those karmic arisings. And I love the way Okumura Roshi talks about, or we can also live by vow. And the way that he expresses living by vow is really a wholehearted practice of Zazen. It's really a wholehearted practice of everything, quite honestly. But we can see our vows and we can, you know, compartmentalize vows, right? We do the 4 Bodhisattva vows at the end of our sitting. That's our time for Bodhisattva vows, or on Sunday. Refuge vows, maybe we have a practice at home that we chant and do vows. But Okumura Roshi is really talking about a very practical way of how we can live by vow, how we can start to replace our unconscious, reactive, karmic conditioning with purposeful, intentional activity, action, living by vow. And then we can see very clearly, can't we, what's working, what's not working. It reminds me of an expression that people say when you tell somebody that you've been trying something. You say, well, how's that working for you? I think Buddha essentially said that to us. Don't believe everything I say just because they call me Buddha. Investigate, be curious, explore, examine from your own standpoint, from your own life. How's that going for you? Living by karma, engaging in repetitive actions again and again and again. So I want to read a poem that Okumura Roshi, and Okumura Roshi, for those of you that are familiar, is the abbot at the Bloomington, I think it's the Bloomington Zen Center. I think there's a different name for it, but it's in Bloomington, Indiana. And he is a successor to Uchiyama Roshi. And Uchiyama Roshi, many of us may have read the book Opening the Hand of Thought that was written by Uchiyama Roshi. So when Katagiri Roshi, a few weeks before his death, wrote this poem about living in vow. And he wrote, living in vow, silently sitting, 63 years. Plum blossoms begin to bloom. The jeweled mirror reflects truth as it is. So I'd like to read a little bit of what he talks about, how our Zazen practice is wholehearted living by vow. I'm going to directly quote him. In Zazen, many things come up. Thoughts, emotions, sometimes anger and hatred. But all you have to do is take care of Zazen in eternal possibility. It's completely beyond good or bad, right or wrong. So put aside all kinds of imagination fabricated by your consciousness. Don't attach to thoughts and emotions. Just let them return to emptiness. Just be present there and swim in Buddha nature. This is living the Bodhisattva vow to help all beings. Then the great energy of the universe supports you, and you take one step toward the future with all beings. So I thought it might be kind of fun to start off just by looking at the ways that you associate to the word vow. What comes up when you hear the word vow? Not necessarily your Buddhist practice, but vow. What's a vow? How do we think about vows?
Good.
Commitments. Yes.
Promise.
Promise.
Marriage.
Absolutely. Marriage.
Intention.
Intention. Yes. Yes. So Okamura Roshi talks about, we generally associate a solemn promise or a personal commitment to doing something, to actualizing something, to maintaining something. And he said, but the Buddhist definition of vow has a larger meaning. And in his book, Living by Vow, he looks at all of the different chants and verses and sutras that we routinely chant and sees everything as intricately and intimately connected with vow. He said there is no difference between the person and the vow. If we're practicing wholeheartedly, it's a deep and intimate connection. Whatever you're engaged in, whatever vow you're taking, or wearing it, or tasting it, or breathing it. So he talked about, which I thought was fascinating, and there's a part I'm going to read to you because I was laughing out loud at home when I read this. I thought, oh my God, I've never heard this story, and it's so rich. He talked about Buddha Shakyamuni's vow. He called it, he said Shakyamuni, his vow was to sit alone under the Bodhi tree. And he saw sufferings and was pummeled by Maras, all those states of mind that just won't let go of the darkness and the difficulties and the obstacles until he was free from twisted karma. So he sat, and this is what I started just really appreciating. Shakyamuni Buddha remained sitting for several weeks to savor his enlightenment. I was thinking, oh my gosh, this could be the feeling we have at the end of sesshin, right? Oh, don't end. I don't want it to end on Saturday. Let's savor our, experiences. Let's savor our connections. And he was released from all ignorance and suffering, and he enjoyed it. He felt that what he now saw, the causes of suffering, was very difficult to understand. He feared that if he tried to teach others what he had discovered, no one would get it, no one would understand. So he thought, the content of my enlightenment, the concept of interdependent origination, is extremely difficult to comprehend. Those who enjoy clinging take pleasure in attachment and are fond of their ties of dependence and they will never be able to understand. So what I didn't know was Buddha's hesitation to teach after having an awakening experience. You know, if this is true, obviously. So he wrote a verse that Okamura, he said, he expressed this thought about what I just experienced. You know, the people that are clinging and so attached and averse towards this and that and picking and choosing are never going to really be able to appreciate it. So maybe I won't teach. So the verse goes, that enlightenment which I have attained through many hardships, should I now teach to others? Those who hold fast to greed and hatred cannot easily understand this truth. Against the common stream, subtle, profound, fine, and difficult to perceive, it cannot be seen by those who are lost in desire, cloaked in darkness. So Okamura says, Buddha's hesitation to teach is understandable. I mean, it's a big job, right? it's a grand gesture at minimum. And he said, Buddha's determination to start teaching was the origination of the vow. He made a vow. He made a vow to help others, to teach his experiences, his understanding to others. And Okamura goes on to say that a vow is a very practical form of the expression of wisdom and compassion. So, you know, I encourage all of us as we're sitting in sesshin, and now that we have 2 days left, to think about the ways that we can approach our chants, our services, our rituals with this wholeheartedness to experience as a wish to help others. So it is our bodhisattva vow, right? And Katagiri says all of the verses and scripture and chants that we do in the Soto Zen tradition is based on the Mahayana teaching of the bodhisattva vow. It's probably one of the more familiar vows that we clearly see as a vow. But refuge is a vow. Taking precepts are vows, right? Chanting the Heart Sutra is a vow. What isn't a vow? That's part of the practice. So, as bodhisattvas, our wish to help, to benefit, we recognize that there are some steps involved in it. Taking the precepts, taking the bodhisattva vow. Because the fundamental idea in Mahayana Buddhism is we take the bodhisattva vow and we try to practice like Buddha Shakyamuni to attain Buddhahood. That's pretty fundamental, isn't it? We take the bodhisattva vow, and every time we recite it, we take the bodhisattva vow. You don't have to reserve it for special ceremony. I love what Roshi was saying this morning as we engaged in service, you know, the being flexible and holding the container for ritual, not being so strictly adhering to the forms necessarily. And we can do that, can't we, with vow? You know, sometimes in my own way at home with my own little rituals, and I love reciting refuge prayer. I read somewhere that Dogen Zenji on his deathbed actually put up the refuge prayer in his room so that he could chant. You know, I don't know how true this is either, but I like it to be true. It's a very, very inspiring story. that's how important refuge practice is. So it's so easy to be derailed and think, go for refuge, Toda Dharma and Saga, go for refuge, Toda Dharma and Saga. And at the end of it, I can check in with myself. Oh, how was it wholehearted? Well, did something feel like it was stirring in my heart, in my mind, as I'm engaging in this, very ancient practice? So our fundamental idea in Mahayana Buddhism is we take the Bodhisattva vow, the precepts, and promise to practice like Buddha, to sit. Right? It's a good thing we don't have to sit until we experience. We'd all be clawing at the door to get out. Enough. And Okamura says, one of the fundamental differences about Mahayanas is the belief that any one of us can become a bodhisattva with wholehearted practice. And if we awaken bodhicitta, some of the teachings that he pointed to in the Pali Canon pointed to how Buddha Shakyamuni was considered bodhisattva. But the Mahayanas brought it to all of us. No, we can all practice this path of becoming a bodhisattva, a Buddha in becoming Buddha. So as Mahayanas, we understand that, awakening bodhicitta, as Roshi's been describing, that heart mind, awakening that wish to experience freedom from suffering, from samsara, so that we can help others do the same. We can't help people who are drowning if we don't know how to swim, right? It's impossible. Maybe throw a lifeguard, buoy, a lifeguard, throw a lifeguard too, for that matter. But we can't really help if we're not practicing deeply, continuously, wholeheartedly. And so when we think about the archetype of a bodhisattva, there's really two very simple aspects to it, which is becoming a Buddha and helping all sentient beings. And we're helping sentient beings now. This isn't some lofty, far-off goal. Investigate this in your own life, the ways in which you are helping, the ways in which you help here, the ways in which you help at work, the ways in which you care for others, your families, your spouses, your friends, your pets, the ways in which you are already helping and caring. So while it seems impossible, it's very possible, right? It really is. Now, what I thought was interesting, Okamura Roshi talked about how his teacher, Uchiyama Roshi, very much connected the practice of atonement with vow. He said, it's the two sides of one practice, atonement and vow. Because he said, vow is endless and practice is never complete. So he said, when we engage in the practice of atonement, it's also a vow. Everything is vow, living by vow. And he said, he gave a little more explanation about why that is. And he said, well, atonement is really a reflection of our screw-ups, isn't it? Atonement is leading into, is being, I loved remember having a conversation with Roshi Jun way back when about atonement. And I loved what Roshi Jun said to me, and this sticks with me every time I think about it. Being one with the screw up, the imperfection, the flaw. Not shying away from it, not trying to candy coat it, not covering it up. And he said, that was Buddha's origin to seek the way. Saw the imperfections, saw the suffering, experienced the difficulties and the obstacles and the pain. And so Uchiyama Roshi says that same realization of atonement and vow, that same realization gives us the energy to study and practice. So we have to be inspired in studies and practices, right? Otherwise, we're just, it's the Zen expression, dead words on a page. It's not really igniting our heart. It's not really awakening Bodhi mind, right? So, Okamura goes on to talk about some specific verses and chants that he feels are our vows, and refuge is one of the first ones that he talks about. The very deep connection between refuge and living by vow. He said, because it's making it clear to us the direction to follow. When we feel lost, like, what should I do? How should I do this? Am I on the right path? All those places where doubt can creep in and we can have some wonderment about, is this, is this what I should be doing? And he said, refuge is making clear, refuge vows are making clear the directions to follow. He said, because when we take refuge in Buddha, we're vowing to walk the path of Buddha. We're vowing to imbue our life, our actions with wisdom and compassion as best we can, to whatever level of understanding we have about that. So we're vowing to walk that path, knowing that yes, the Maras are coming, are here, never let go for a while, right? But the Maras are coming from the darkness of our hearts and minds. And he said, refuge in Dharma is, vowing to share the teachings and wisdom. Anytime we talk to loved ones or, we think about it and we ask questions about it, we're sharing our wish to share the Dharma, our wish to share the Dharma, maybe by our own example of what it means to practice Dharma. Maybe we don't even have to say a word, but we can share the Dharma by practicing the Dharma and having the Dharma unfold as part of our life. And then the vow to go for refuge in Sangha to create harmony without hindrance, Okamura Roshi also talked about the vow, the verse of the Kesa. And he told an interesting story that I'm not really good about telling stories, but I love listening to stories. And he told the story about how Dogen Zenji was so captivated when he saw the Chinese putting their robe on and chanting the verse of the Kesa that he adopted and felt like this was, this affirms our wish to experience, to practice the same vow as Buddha. And to think of all the ways that Buddhas appear, past, present, and future. When we put on the Kesa, when we put on the Raksu, the vow, we chant the verse of the Kesa, right? But do you ever feel like you kind of get lost a little bit? Sometimes I find myself thinking about something else, like what's for breakfast. A smell will kind of drift in, and I'm like, "Ooh, that really smells good. Wonder what it is." So I've walked past it. I've missed that opportunity to practice, to live by vow. Well, we can't do this perfectly 100% of the time, but all of the words that you used, intention and wish and promise and commitment, are reminding ourselves what we're really interested in doing with our life. What does Mary Oliver say with this one wildlife or something like that? Those of you that maybe read Mary Oliver. What are you gonna?
How do you plan to use this, is it wildlife or this one precious life?
How do you plan to use this one precious life, this one wildlife? I was telling Roshi, I'd like to be a little bit wilder. So I'm working on that. That word is staying with me a little bit more. I don't often let my hair go. Except when I ordained, then I was gone. Then Okamura Roshi talks about the Heart Sutra. Oh, I know we all love the Heart Sutra. And he said, this is a practice that explains how to fulfill our bodhisattva vow. Have we thought about it that way? This is a practice that explains how to fulfill the bodhisattva vow and awaken with all beings. Because the Heart Sutra is singling out the paramita of wisdom, right? It's putting special emphasis on prajna wisdom as the most essential of all the paramitas, to cut through our ignorance of duality, to cut through our ignorance of solidity, of the concrete nature of self and other. So let me just read a little passage because I can't do justice in my own words. Let me take it from the master. So Okamura Roshi says, the Heart Sutra is considered the essence of the large collection of Prajnaparamita Sutras. I think some of the original books were like 100,000 volumes. Can you imagine carrying that around? And then it was distilled down to the Diamond Sutra, 300 lines. Now, I don't know how many lines we have. I counted at one time, I think something like 56 lines. And I think, oh, 56 lines, come on. That should be easily memorized, right? Or the mantra, one line, captures the essence of the Heart Sutra, right? So we can practice on any level. You feel like, okay, I'd like to read the Diamond Sutra, wonderful, but I'll try to memorize this one, or the mantra. The mantra is the essence of the Heart Sutra. So it points to the essential role of prajna in our efforts to fulfill our vows. To follow the bodhisattva path, we study and practice prajna paramita, the wisdom that sees impermanence, the wisdom that sees no self, emptiness, and interdependent origination. That's what the Heart Sutra is pointing us towards, helping us deepen. When we clearly see this reality, that we and other things exist together without fixed independent entities, our practice is strengthened. We understand that to live by vow is not to accept a particular fixed doctrine, but as a natural expression of our life force. Wow. And then Okamura Roshi talks about the verse for opening the sutra, the chant that we have when we're about ready to listen to Teisho's or Dharma talks. He said that's a vow that we can make. Maybe if we don't chant it, we can memorize it and kind of have it in mind. So he said it points to the importance of living with vow, to listen to the teachings wholeheartedly, to try to understand them, to reflect on them, so that we can apply them. The Tibetans used to talk about leaky pot syndrome, leaky pot mind, the ways in which it interferes with our ability to practice the teachings because we don't remember them. We're like an upside down, bowl that's got holes in it. And it's just, we listen to it and we think, beautiful, oh my God, yes, this is exactly what my heart needs to hear. And then a half an hour later, we're struggling to remember an essential point. Maybe we vow to listen. We vow to understand. We vow to digest, and we vow to apply it. Another place to be curious, if we do that, if we engage in a vow for ourselves, a commitment, a promise, a wish, will that teaching land differently or more wholeheartedly? Otherwise, are we wasting our time? And then finally, Okumura talks about the four bodhisattva vows. And he said, these are the vows that we live with and we live by. It's our direction. And he compares them very, very beautifully to the Four Noble Truths. And he said the first bodhisattva vow is the first truth, enabling others to see the dangers of suffering, the dangers of samsara, the dangers of continually walking this path of creating karma that leads to suffering. He said the second bodhisattva vow, our wish is to help others understand that there's a way to stop it. We're not just caught in this like a dog chasing its tail without a way to stop. There's how does suffering originate? And then the third vow, helping others settle into the path peacefully. Because there's a path, right? There's a path. And then the fourth verse is continuous practice. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Never ending, always practicing. So for the last final moments, and then maybe just open up for some discussion. Kaigen Roshi, who, as you know, was the abbot and founded the Minnesota Zen Center, but first came to LA to help organize the Soto Temple, and then went to San Francisco to work as a teacher and assistant of Suzuki Roshi. And then after Suzuki Roshi's passing, went to Minnesota. But he wrote a beautiful poem about vow, and I copied it out. He called it Peaceful Life. And it was his ode to living by vow. So everything he's talking about here is helping us look at vow. So I'm going to read and then give a little bit of what Okumura gave as commentary related to the poem. Being told that it's impossible, one believes in despair. Is that so? Being told that it is possible, one believes in excitement. That's right. But whichever is chosen, it does not fit one's heart neatly. So Okumura said, this is the reality of our lives. One believes in despair, one believes in excitement. He's saying that's the truth of suffering, right? That's the pleasure, pain. That's the good, bad. That's the reality of our lives. All the judgments that appear, all of the ways in which we live based on opinions of ourselves, opinions of others. And he said, but whichever is chosen, whether aversion, attachment, whichever is chosen, it doesn't fit neatly into our heart, right? Always some underlying discontent, dissatisfaction. That gnawing feeling that you sometimes have, even when everything is going spot on. that little sense of somewhere there's some discomfort. So then, Katagiri Roshi says, being asked what is unfitting. So this is our asking, well, what's wrong? What's the cause of this? I don't know what it is, but my heart knows somehow. I feel an irresistible desire to know what a mystery human is. But Katagiri says our motivation to question and understand is awakening of Bodhi mind. Our motivation to question and understand is awakening of Bodhi mind. Because we want to know the real cause of suffering. As to this mystery, he said Buddha understood this mystery. We're trying to clarify, knowing how to live, knowing how to walk with people, demonstrating and teaching. This is the Buddha. Again, our need to understand Bodhi mind, awakening to the reality of our life, knowing how to live, knowing how to be with others, codependent origination, interdependence. And how can we live in a wholesome way with peace? From my human eyes, I feel it's really impossible to become a Buddha. But this I, regarding what the Buddha does, vows to practice, to aspire, to be resolute, and tells me, yes, I will. Just practice right here, now, and achieve continuity endlessly, forever. This is living in vow. Herein is one's peaceful life found. So even though we study and practice and feel we're still human and it's impossible, but Katagiri Roshi is saying, with vow, with aspiration, with intention, with resolution, right? With determination. With that voice that says, I loved this line that says, yes, I will. I've used that voice. Places where I feel the Mara that says, you can't, too old, too blah, 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 whatever it is. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. So we just try, right? We try to sit, we try to help, find ways to help others. We work with others, and we recognize the person and the vow are one. So I want to stop and give us some time just for discussion, and as you know, I often run on, so I'm working on that to be a little bit more invite all of you in. So any thoughts? Any thoughts from what we talked about or what? About your practice of vow? Any ways in which you pointedly practice with vow? Because remember, Okamura is saying, if we're not living by vow, we're living by karma. Okay, that's key. That felt like a slap across my face when I read that. I'm like, not living by vow, living by karma.
Isn't living by vow generating good karma?
Absolutely. I mean, in this context, as I read it, as I understood it, from Okamura Roshi, was the fact that it's the sort of unconscious determinants of karma, where we're not really paying attention to what we're doing, how we're doing it, the quality of an action, how it's landing on others. Because of course, when we're practicing, we're creating, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the seeds of the good seeds in our consciousness. Or as the Yogacara teachings are all about. Yes.
Question. So you started by saying that the way he defined vow is not commitment. It's something more than that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I understand the difference between,
Yeah.
to me, commitment is a vow. And even if I have a commitment, and I'm gonna keep practicing, so I
Yes.
can fulfill that commitment.
Yes.
But is there?
Yeah,
What he's saying.
He talked about the Japanese word for vow. He translated it as to wish. So he's trying to help us divorce that idea of like something that feels like it's obligatory or heavy or burdensome, to have the wish, to aspire to. Because a commitment, we can have all kinds of commitments, and it may not be our favorite commitment, but we feel obligated to follow through with it, right? So Okamura kind of broke it down with the translation towards wish, aspire. I'm recognizing that it's awakening 49. Good question. Thank you. Being told that it's impossible. How do you relate to that? What's your voice that says, yes, I will? What's the voice that comes up for you? Being told it's impossible. This feels hard. This is impossible. What's your voice that says, yes, I will?
I always hear that voice. Living by vow is like holding water in your hands. And takes a lot of work.
It does. It
I
does.
haven't been noticing it going around.
I love that, Yokozan. Beautiful image. Yeah. How quickly it slips away. Like living by vow. It's like holding water in your hand. And it can disappear. Or we let it go. Through lack of mindfulness, conscientiousness, awareness.
You always get a chance to try it again.
You do, yes. Maybe that's your voice. Yes, I will. You know, Shantideva talks a lot about the mental factors of conscientiousness, awareness, and mindfulness as the key mental factors that we need to practice so that we keep things close to our heart, so that we remember, so that we're reminded, so that, as you know, Gyokuzan was saying, otherwise we have good intention, but we don't always have the follow through because we forget or we slip up. Or samsara's shiny objects were just too shiny that day, right? Or hurt too much, so we put our head under the covers. I encourage you to find what's that voice? Yes, I will, for you. Make it your own personalized version of. What is it? When Mars arise, when obstacles rear up, what's your version of yes, I will? It is impossible. I feel it's really impossible to become a Buddha. Katagiri Roshi wrote this, right? But this I, regarding what the Buddha does, vows to practice. Can you imagine not practicing at this point? So any last comments, thoughts?
I wanted to say something about that. Yes, I will. As I'm thinking about the 442nd.
Yeah.
Continental Compact team, and how their motto was go for broke.
Yeah.
When they're in the field, right, they're faced with unsurmountable opposition.
Yeah.
Right, guns, outnumbered or whatever.
Yeah.
And this vow to go for broke, I mean, it's got to be in your psyche,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the way you're brought up, the principles, or that you realize that I have to live my life this way now,
Yes.
which is giving it all I've got, even when it looks pretty dim.
Yes,
It
Roshi.
looks pretty,
Yes. Yes.
and I mean, even death is looking you in the face, and you're still going to go for broke.
Yeah.
It's just give it all you've got.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I see our Bodhisattva vow kind of like that,
Yeah.
in a sense. And how we practice, how I practice with it is anytime I have an inkling of, ooh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to do that. That's my little flag saying, yes, is it time for yes, I will here for the vow
Yeah.
to take effect now.
Yeah.
And I think, at some point it becomes a body thing.
Yes. Yes.
Not so much tied up with, well, if I do it this way,
Yeah.
I'll kind of loses ground right there in terms of the working of the vow, or the practice
Yes.
of the vow. So, the 442nd, I mean, that was like extreme circumstance, and I hope that none of us ever have to face something like that. And so how do we do this? Much scaled back version of our sacred lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all have mountains. So that for me, these are the barriers that come up, that's our practice walls
Yes.
to work with. And I failed many times.
Yes.
But I love how the atonement process, even I am one with being slacked off. Okay, yes, none of that. I'm being a fussy today. I'm being really kind of crabby Buddha today,
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kind of owning it, really owning it without judgment is such a big thing also. In terms of the perfectionism
Big thing.
trend, I have a strong perfectionist streak, so I'm still working with it.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. How beautiful that when we chant the Heart Sutra, it's about. When we chant our Myogetsu, it's about.
Yes. Yes.
Everything we're doing here, we're practicing vows, our vows.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Transition. And so I'm very grateful for the talk
Thanks.
today and for each one of us who are doing what we can in the various roles of this beautiful session.
Absolutely.
My my mind is interesting place lately, just what's happening with me physically, physiology is playing with me, and feels a lot like samsara. So as you were, sharing about love, it came to me that the present moment is my, yes, I will. And my body earlier was like, I'm not doing all these windows, I can't. And my mind was saying whatever it needed to say about reacting to my body, and they were having a field day with me. My mind and my body for this. And then the being in the present moment, I just shifted my body and I faced the sun. And I just felt the sun hug me. And I felt so grateful to be able to just have a nanosecond of peace.
Yes. Yes.
And then I thought about what I'm learning here, you know, with the teachings, you know, the refuge is that, you know, I want someone else to feel this peace, and I want people in the Zendo to feel it. I want both parts to feel it, and I want it. And that really just started to happen. And it is so much larger than what my mind and my body.
Yes. Yes.
So I think, yes, I will is the present moment. And that's difficult.
It is.
But it's really comforting. It's really comforting to find my ability to do that. Yeah, thank you so much. That's about.
It's a good place.
Oh, reading a book and it talks about how, what do we say, me or mine, we so reinforce this self that we've created. You know, mine, nothing is mine. Yeah. Nothing, you know,
Right.
you go to the store and you buy something, you think it's yours,
Yeah.
but it's not, you
Right.
know, you just gave someone money, and
Yeah.
they put this in your head, but it's not yours, it's just, it's,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a good point, Annabelle.
mine is,
Yeah, it can get in our way, can't it?
yeah, even when people say America is my country, you know, that's not a big,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not,
Right. Right.
it's a big piece of land. We identify with so much.
Yeah.
Right?
Constantly. Yes. Constantly identifying, grabbing, pushing. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Wonderful sharing the Dharma with all of you. Beautiful.
Stop cloud recording, yes.